Testing and Iteration Panel, prepared for and presented at the 2016 Square One Entrepreneurship Training Program. Square One is a program of the Center for Emerging Technologies. CET is an affiliate of the Cortex Innovation Community. Square One is funded in part by the Missouri Technology Corporation.
So just very quickly, and this does not do them justice by any means, but I want to make sure there's enough time for us to talk. But Ron Story is with us. He's a serial entrepreneur. Internationally, has worked internationally and locally. His techniques have been used by companies who have become Arch Grants, Capital Innovator, and Cultivation Capital companies. So he has extensive leadership skills as well as a wide array of startups from a number of different industries. And we have Claudia with us. Claudia is the Executive Vice President of GWR Safety Systems. And she has a manufacturing company in St. Charles, correct? Okay, great, wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm gonna let her describe the company so I don't do it a disservice. Brad is actually a Square One graduate, a little plug. So he was part of our cohort last year. You're in my seat. And he wants his tuna fish sandwich. He is one of the few entrepreneurs who, upon leaving the program, was ready to quit his day job. It is not the recommended pathway. I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. In fact, we had a speaker last year who, quite frankly, talked somebody out of it by merely being in the room. But as of January of this year, you've been working on your venture full time. And Spectrum, I'll let you describe the products because the description you gave me went really broad, and I knew you when you were focusing just on one. So I suspect that was part of your iteration and testing process. Okay. Now I'm not going to give away the punchline here. And Pravina is a co-founder of Talify, so has joined us thanks to our friends at Arch Grants. She and her husband came to St. Louis in 2014 from their home in Britain, and by all accounts have made St. Louis their home. I challenge you to find a greater booster of the city because they truly are very enthusiastic about being here, working here, and growing their business here. So their product actually turns pretty much anything that can be systematized into a checklist so that your company can be more productive in its activities. So for me, I just wanted to, and Brad, I might put you on the spot and say, when I met you, you were working on a portable mass spectrometer. I was right the first time. I shouldn't doubt my memory. And since then, you've not only moved through that product, but you've also expanded the array of what your company is working on. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So just upon graduating from this program, sorry, I have specific instructions on how to hold this. When I graduated from here, I applied for a grant within Biogenerator and was awarded it in January. And it was to develop a novel spectrophotometer that's integrated into an everyday laboratory instrument. My goal was to use it for nucleic acid analysis, protein analysis, measuring cell density, things like I did on a routine basis, and I hated doing it because I had to do it all the time. When I was a grad student, an instrument came out on the market that was called a nanodrop. And it revolutionized the way we measured nucleic acids because it made it more user-friendly. You didn't have to dilute your samples, and you only use 2 microliters of it. Unfortunately, still today, it's an expensive piece of equipment, and it's not found in every lab. It's found in about every other lab at Washington University. At other universities, it's 1 in every 5 or 1 every 10 labs. Some people will travel to another building to use one, and so I found a better way. And so I'm taking this micropipette. It's simply a turkey baster. It's been mechanized, right? You attach a tip to it, you pull the sample up, you push a button, shines a light through the sample, and you get your measurement right there, right? So I had this grant to test and develop and prove that concept, and it worked great for visible applications, but not for UV. When I want to measure nucleic acids, it's at 260 nanometers in the deep UV range. And so I had to think about what can I do to change that. And I came up with, instead of having a disposable tip that goes on the end of a pipette, I took the very vessel that they capture and purify that nucleic acid in and modify it in just a small way so that now you can take it right out of your centrifuge after you've collected your sample, put it in my spectrophotometer, measure it. You never have to pipette it. You completely reduce the risk of contamination. The spectrophotometer now is small enough. It's about the size of a computer mouse. It can stay on a mouse, or it can stay on your desk. It can be integrated into the pipette stand if we want to, or another piece of equipment that's on the bench. So it doesn't actually take up any more space than what's already there. So those are my 2 products right now. And it has a disposable product that, the tips and tubes that I'm really excited about too.
Does anybody else want to share sort of how their product has evolved over time? We started with X and now we're at Y, or maybe we started at X and now we're at L.
Okay. So in 2012, I started working with a local startup today it's called Hatchbuck. It used to be called Systematic Revenue. And they do what they call marketing automation, right? And that's where you get an email from Amazon after you looked at something. Next thing you know, tomorrow they send you an email and say, hey, you looked at it, but you didn't buy it, right? That's marketing automation. There's no creepy person at Amazon sending you those emails. It's software, right? So, exactly. Well, when I tell you what we do now, it's really creepy. So I worked there, and they were trying to go after the financial advisor market. So I used to manage for Farmers Insurance, Illinois and Iowa. So I have all these financial advisors in my cell phone. So I would go out and I would interview them and say, hey, we want to do this marketing automation thing. And we found out that, yeah, this works. They didn't want to pay for it though, right? Not only did they not want to pay for it, they didn't want to do it because you have to set all this crap up and think through the whole customer process. So I went back to Don and I said, hey, we should work with them, but we should do it for them. We don't want to charge them $100. They're willing to pay $500 if they never have to touch it. And he said, we're not in that business. We can't raise money around a service. We're a software business. So I said, okay, well, I'm just kind of working here as a consultant, trying to help you out to see how this works. I'm going to do this business. But you should give me your software for free because I'll put people on it, or at least at a discount, and we could build a user base, but I'll do all the stuff. He says, no, if you want to use it, pay full price. Right? So I went out and I found someone to build a copy of it for myself, right? I'm an innovator, right? So online you can find email marketing softwares, right? And anybody has this. You can go and Google it and find a white label product. And I found that product, and it eventually became what today is known as Lead Warmer, right? So I don't know how to code a thing, but I always tell people who know how to code, you can't sell, so it doesn't matter. Right? So, I can sell it, right? So I don't have a product that's my own, right? At that time, I didn't have a product of my own, but I had 10 agents that were willing to give me the $500 a month, right? So I'd already sold 10 people on paying me, $6,000 a year. So I'm in business. We're rolling, right? Eventually we get this going, and I realize that they don't have any email addresses for me to send these emails to. So I got somebody to pay me for something that they can't even use because they got 2,000 customers, and insurance agents don't collect email addresses from their users. So now I'm like, oh, what are we going to do, right? So, okay, we got to help them to get their leads. That's another problem. So we went from marketing automation with the product, with customers, people paying us that couldn't use it, but because they liked me, they continued to pay until we could figure that out. Eventually, we became to sum it up, they're all in-house marketing company, right? So we would handle everything from writing the emails to doing their Facebook ads to everything, automating their entire office. Well, here's something to show you the last step to kind of speed up a bit. This summer, I'm in someone's office, a huge financial advisor. He's top 5 in the country, right? I'm in his office, and he negotiated me down to the penny for a process we were going to do for him. Someone calls him from a magazine and says, hey, you want to be in a magazine? He's like, yeah. They said, well, we're going to do this, and it's going to cost $8,000. He says, all right, I'll just send you the check. And I'm like, wait, how did he just get $8,000 with no negotiation? I'm in the wrong business, right? So in the last 60 days, we created 2 magazines. Why? Because that's our entry point. I found out that financial advisors will pay more to be famous than what they would to follow up with their current customers. So we created 2 magazines. So now when I put them in the magazine, Here's the pitch real quick. When this is what I tell financial advisors. As a financial advisor, when you meet someone, what do you give them? Well, I give them my business card, and I tell them I can help them with their retirement. Okay, well, when the Merrill Lynch guy meets with them, what does he do? Well, he probably does the same thing. Okay, here's what I can help you to do. My advisors that I work with now, they give out a business card, a copy of 3 magazines that they were in, and a book that they wrote. Do you want to compete with them? They say, no, I want to do that. Okay, here, let me tell you how much it costs, right? So that's how I sell it. But now that they're in the magazine and they're positioned, they can generate leads. They can do the email marketing. So yeah, they pay like 10 grand up front for me to put them in a magazine and do all this PR stuff. But now they have leads, so they can continue to pay me for Lead Warmer, the original thing that we started with, right? So it took me 3 years to find out what the hook was. The hook wasn't marketing automation, which is what they need, right? But it wasn't what they wanted. Does that make sense? So as you talk to your customers, they will complain about a lot of things that they're not willing to pay to solve. So be sure, your customers will complain about, if you Google it online, it says people will bitch about stuff they're not willing to pay for. That's actually something that I said on another podcast, which is true. They will complain about stuff that they're not willing to pay for, but you have to find out what they're willing to pay for, and then find out how your product can fit in on the back of that. Does that make sense?
Great. Wonderful. Claudia, seatbelts.
Yeah, so GWR Safety Systems makes seat belts. I bought the company together with my husband in 2014. The company was started in Spain. My husband and I moved there for 2 years. This company started.
This doesn't amplify that much.
Yeah. So I bought a company in 2014, and it makes seat belts. And when this company started 35 years ago, the seat belts exist for about 50 years, and so they started with what we call a 2-point static. It's like 2 pieces of webbing and a buckle in the middle that holds you. Since then, the product has evolved a lot. At the same time, not only this company has evolved together with the rest of the industry on how seatbelts have evolved into making it like having a retractor, someone that collects your webbing when you put your seatbelt on, and it become much more intelligent when your seatbelt actually starts working before there's a crash. But we've actually evolved in many different other categories, to a point that we're now doing not a seatbelt, but securement systems for people that are either disabled or injured, or they've gone through a surgery, they've had a stroke, they can, sit on a chair. So in the way we've gone to that path, we've started with like static seatbelts for the cars, then we went into buses, and then we started growing into different categories. And then from there, we started going into harnesses for racing. Then with the same technology, we were able to use it to tie cargo in trucks and planes. We've also gone into securing wheelchairs. So now we do wheelchair tie downs. And then the next level of evolution, it's been going into the healthcare. So it's just a different example on how you can go within categories within the same industry, so different products like emergency vehicles, buses, lawn mowers, all those different categories only within, like, let's say, vehicles. Then you can go into other uses like racing, and then you can go into other complete different uses like medical.
And Pravina, can you tell us more about how your product is involved?
Yeah, so my company is Talify, and Talify is an app that converts any repeatable business process into an easy-to-follow checklist. So examples of this are client onboarding, or onboarding a new member of staff, or accounts payable, or anything repeatable in your business. It could be manufacturing related, it could be anything. If you can write it in a list, we can checklistify it. So that's what we do now. However, when we started off, it was supposed to be a consumer checklist app. So we all love checklists. People love checklists, businesses love checklists. And so we wanted to make it so that it was going to be a B2C. So consumers would come to us, build their checklist, and hopefully share their checklist and monetize that. And then I spent 6 months talking to consumers that would potentially buy us or use us. And I talked to businesses who would potentially buy us and pay us a lot of money and use us. And so we focused in on just a B2B startup. And that decision was made within the first 6 months. I decided not to build a product, but to just interview tons of people with the money, the first couple of $1,000s that we had raised. And so, yeah, that's how we've kind of mini pivoted or focused.
Back to Claudia. You went really good. Like, we have lots of entrepreneurs whose ideas are, there are just so many people who can use what I'm making, buying, selling, right? You acquired a company with one specialty, and then you iterated into a bunch of others. Can you talk a little bit about that process? Because most people want to go right here, and it sounded a lot like to me that you killed it in seatbelts, and then you killed it with buses, and then you killed it in cargo. You didn't jump all the way to healthcare. So could you talk a little bit about?
Well, so I talk about the company because it's now mine, but it's taken 35 years to go through all this process, right? We didn't do this in only 2 years. In most of the cases, it's been a customer need. We were working with a customer, and let's say we were doing static seatbelts, and they said, well, so whoever was doing my driver's seats is not working so well. Do you want to get into this? So we got into this. And then from there, maybe there was an opportunity where we would build like cargo or cargo securement for trucks that were going into races. And then that's how we started going into, well, we can build the harnesses as well. We have the same technology. So in most of the cases, we try to hear what our customer needs and try to think beyond what they currently are buying. When it works most effectively is when the customer comes and asks you and tells you, I have this problem. Like, we know of a partner we have working in seatbelts as well, that they are now doing beds for trucks. And they were making seatbelts, but Volvo came to them and say, can you make beds for me? And they said yes. So, sometimes you just go with your customer needs.
Did you ever say no?
Yes. So that's, I would say it's harder to say no than to say yes, but it's better in most of the cases to say no than to say yes. Sometimes either you'll spread your money I would say you spread your resources too thin, being your money too thin, being your people too thin, being your time too thin. So the way we do it is we have a plan where we want to be in 2030, where we want to be in 2020, where do I want to be in 2017, what do I want to do this year. So we have a goal for where I want the company to be. And then from there, it goes all the way down to what everyone is doing on a daily basis. So we have our, what's our objective, what's our goal, what's our strategy, and how we're going to measure those goals and how we're going to hold accountable to those goals. And from there, we drive the action plan from the CEO to everyone in the company.
Ron, I saw a lot of head nods.
No, I just agree with what you said.
Okay, wonderful, great. I can keep going, but yeah.
For those of you who started with just a single employee like yourselves, what was your second employee and who was your third employee? If that's even happened yet.
So I'm one of the few who I am a horrible manager because I scream at people. I can use a lot of four-letter words. So I have 0 employees. I have a lot of independent contractors that work for me in places that I don't need to see. It's funny because I get invited to speak at things like this all the time, but in the startup community, people will tell me I never work because they don't see me doing it. They don't see me having a big team around me. But in reality, a lot of those companies that were saying I don't work, they're not around anymore, but I'm still doing what I'm doing, right? So you don't need employees initially. You can get things in the beginning stages. You need a product and a customer. Right? Once you have that and you can sell enough, then you can afford to build a team, unless you go and buy a business. But at the beginning, it's about sales and product, right?
Just asking beyond that.
Oh, no, I'm just saying that for those who think that you need 20 people, I'm the one person to tell you don't need that at the beginning. But other people may have a different perspective where.
Do you have employees yet, Brad?
I do not.
And Rodina, how have you grown?
So I started a company with my husband. So we were co-founders from the beginning, just the two of us. And very quickly, we started having customers. And so he was focusing on customers with me. And he has a technical background. So he was technically our CTO at the time, as well as CEO, I guess. And so our third employee was a CTO to take off that burden off him. To focus, so we could have 2 people focus on customers rather than just me. right, customers and sales and just ramping up sales, because we had a product that was working and that was selling. And so I needed help, and he said, well, I can help you, rather than get someone else in that really doesn't know what's been going on.
And did they come on as a full-time, like a paid employee, or did you structure it in a different way than a traditional, somebody comes in, gets a salary, sends a contract, or did you do it in a more creative fashion, or?
We always hire temporarily, and it's always, month on month. And if after 3 months, they're great, we take them on with full time, and even give them an option pool, like give them shares. Yeah. Okay.
So I'll provide a different perspective. So when we bought the company, it was only in Spain. So we recently set up an office here. I no longer work in Spain. I have a CEO that runs the business in Spain, and I'm the one that's located here. When we started building the factory here, when you do production, it depends if you do production or if you contract it out. For us, the first person we needed, if I could do sales, I needed someone that could actually produce it for me. So for us, that was the sort of the first person we brought in. But with other people that I speak, that they started with one single company, the next person they brought in, it was someone to help with sales. I've heard before that like no one sells like the owner, but at some point you have to train other people to do it, because you can't be a one-man show. And the sooner you learn to delegate and pass the work to other people, the faster you will grow. Now, the other thing is if you can afford it or not to have it. If you can't afford it, then you can go the route, and we've gone the route here as well, to have interns, and then if they work well, then you can bring them in. We personally want to own the company, and we don't want to take our own decisions, and so we will not give away shares to our employees. So there's just other avenues. We've also not taking any money from anyone else. We're not raising capital. We want to go slower, but we want to own the company.
I want to say one thing real quick. Just in the last week and a half, I've taken on 2 teams of biomedical engineers from WashU that want to work on this project as their senior project. And so they're taking my spectrometer idea and making a few innovations on it that will help it make it more user-friendly.
Ultimate motivation is they are interested.
Yeah.
That's ideal. Okay, cool.
Actually, a question about that before we move on. I was actually had a different question, but just on the biomedical engineering students, who keeps the IP?
So the students do, except in this case, a lot of the IP is already covered. They're just taking concepts and finding solutions within those concepts. Does that make sense? So I have closely defined their work environment to control that.
I just want to make sure that was clear, because that is an important discussion, especially at your level, where you guys already started to establish and build customers. The other big question I had was actually about the same question that you asked, but a little bit more into that, to Claudia. The question was about, you guys sort of went from customers telling you the direction to go, and that's what it sounded like. But the testing and reiteration and testing and iterative process, for a lot of the companies where we're trying to go out and get customers and trying to get an idea of what they want, how do you usually go about deciding when to expand versus go into a field and get more market share in that industry itself? So, seatbelts, you get 16% market share. You guys earn a lot of profit versus 15 different seatbelt types.
Yeah, so I think one example that we have, the medical device, that was something that we realized we had technology we could use for a current need that wasn't being met. That said, that doesn't mean that everyone thought that was needed. And so we started with a very basic prototype. If someone was saying earlier, it was a box made out of wood, and it had a couple of seat belts, inside, and it was very, very basic. But that's how we started with just an idea. And the way, like the lady was saying earlier, instead of designing for, we designed it with. And so what we did in this case is we brought nurses in, and we brought doctors to try to understand what were their needs. And then we brought in patients to give us an idea on what they needed. And so we tried to involve all the different people that were in touch with the product to try to understand what was the best way to develop it. And that's been, our other product it's B2B because we sell it B2B, even though it touches the final consumer. This one being B2C was very different. And so we've been developing this for 2 years. We have a patent on it, but we're still not in the market because we're still making different levels. Now, with that said, at some point, we've also told our engineering team, that's enough. We will go to market with this. You have better ideas. We will keep developing it, and we'll launch it later. But at some point, you got to monetize it. You can't keep driving more patents and more patents. They'll ask you, they want more. They have the next best idea. But at some point, you have to go and monetize it.
Go Casey, then Michael.
So this kind of said, the last question kind of segues into my question, which is, so in the iterative process, let's say you come up with an idea that's an iteration of your first idea. Your first idea is doing well. Your iteration of that idea leads you in a completely different direction. How do you decide whether or not to pivot to focus on that new direction or to expand and try to cover both directions? And are there any best practices for avoiding using up all your resources by trying to strike a balance?
Well, I think the first question that you have to ask yourself in that situation is what I'm currently doing profitable, right? Because the profits from what you're currently doing can fund the new thing, right? A lot of times people will pivot because this isn't profitable in the first place, right? But if it's profitable, keep doing it, right? And then go and use the money from that to go in the other way to develop that if you want. Because don't kill the golden goose that's laying the eggs, that's feeding you, right? On hopes, right? In East St. Louis, we always say, don't mess up your for show money trying to get some more money and end up with no money, right? No, don't do that, right? Keep doing the thing that you're doing that's producing the gold, but then use that over here to fund the next thing and to test the next thing. Now, here's one way you can reduce that risk. Quentin will tell you, I don't build anything, Quentin Ortega will tell you, I don't do anything unless I already sold the customer on it. So nobody in St. Louis is giving me any money for my companies, right? They say I'm too rambunctious and rebellious, right? But all of my companies have been customer funded. So I go out and I say, hey, will you pay me to do this? No. Okay, well, what will you pay me to do in regards to this? And then they tell me how I should innovate, right? And then they give me a check, and then I say, okay, cool. Now, there are other companies in St. Louis that have used that process, right? If you ever look up Hippotrek, Sarah is a great woman, right? I met Sarah. Okay, yeah. Sarah was crying the first day I met her, right? Because she got kicked out of a bunch of doctors' offices. This is public. It's on a podcast I recorded, right? So she don't mind me telling the story. She got kicked out of the doctor's offices. And I said, dude, what are you crying for? She says, well, nobody wants to let me interview them or survey them. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you how to sell this, right? So the following week, she went in, and I said, here's what you do. Go in and say, hey, who's in control of HIPAA violations? No doctor wants to hear that, right? So they're scared poopless, right? So, and she just goes in, no checklist, no books or anything. Who's in control of HIPAA violations? They instantly go get the top person, right? And I said, now here's what you tell them. Can I speak to you in a private room? Now they're really scared, right? So when you get in this private room, here's what you tell them. You say, hey, I'm doing some research with local doctors in regards to HIPAA, this HIPAA software project that I'm working on. Would you like to be a part of that research? At the end, we'll share it with you. They're so relieved you didn't say that they had a violation. They will do anything. They'll wash your car, okay? She sold $100,000 with no software, $100,000 worth of software with no software built using that process. Totally customer-funded business to her first 6 figures with no software at all at the beginning. And they waited 4 months for her to build it, right? So you can go out and have your customers in some cases, even if it's software or services, to pay for that ahead of time. If you don't believe me, I'll pass this on. If you don't believe me, when you go to a concert, do you buy the ticket before or after the concert? So people prepay stuff all the time. We just think with our things, we need to have it developed and then they'll pay for it. No, get them to pay for it. If you're solving a real problem, they'll give you the money ahead of time. So she sold it at a high discount, right, up front to get the early money, but it allowed her to get the people now that are paying her like 10 times more than what the first people paid, right? Did that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts on that before we move on?
I'll say one thing. We had to pivot because we decided that one of the products was easier to take to market first, right? And that was a big decision for us.
So you're doing both products, but you decided that one would get you there faster. It wasn't the one you started with?
Correct.
Any other before we move to Michael? All righty, Michael.
Okay, this kind of relates to a question we had a few questions ago. In regards to cash flow, so you bring on more people, that increases your burn rate. You sort of know that going in before you're just like, your increased revenue is uncertain, but your increased burn rate is certain. And so what I'm wondering is, how do you think about how much runway you need to justify certain hires? Like, how do you go about thinking about that? That's worth the risk of bringing someone on.
I'll let you answer. I was looking for an expert in this, but he's not here right now.
Okay. So we hire a lot of freelancers, like I mentioned. So freelancers that have always been either hourly or do tiny little projects for us, and so that helps us with unpredictable kind of runways that we have at times. And we hire people that are almost at minimum wage, and that's how we have an option pool to incentivize them. And if those people believe in us and believe in our company and how far it's going to go, they know that option pool is going to be worth a lot. And we do give them milestones to say, if you meet these targets and we get our MRR up, which is our monthly recurring revenue for an internet company, you meet those targets and it goes up by this, we'd have this much money in the bank, you get a bonus. Until we raise a Series A or a B, tons of money, and then you'll get market wage or more, together with the options as well.
So basically like set term of employment, not just sort of like ongoing renewable, whatever, automatic renewal, and incentives, basically. Okay. All right. And you reacted when I was asking.
Yeah, I reacted because I always think when I used to work for someone else, I always knew I would get paid that month. The only thing I know now is that I have to pay. No matter if my business comes in or not, I have to pay. I have people that I have to pay, and I don't have any kids, but I have a lot of people working for me that have families that depend on me. So, that's one of the things. I am very conservative, and I will try not to bring someone in if I don't know that I can keep them. And that's for, let's say, my factory in Spain, which is more recurring revenue. For here is I won't bring them if I know that I can't pay them. I'd rather go slower. And if I don't have the money and I don't have the money to cover for the whole year, I might not bring someone in. I don't know if that's the right way to do it. I'd probably be slower than other people that I think they decide to take risks and I think is the right thing. But I'm more conservative on that approach. So I think another way, if you want to bring someone in sales, what you can do though is give them an incentive, like a bonus based on their sales. Like she was saying, if you take my recurring revenue up, for me, it's like if you bring a customer, then I will give you, a 10% or X% amount of bonus. That keeps everyone's goals aligned. We all want new customers. He's going to get paid more if he gets new customers, and obviously we're going to get paid more if we get new customers.
I got Anne. I see Lauren.
Okay, so when you're talking to your customers or your potential customers and you're getting information about your product development, and you get a lot of conflicting information, how do you sort through that? The idea is listen to them, but they're not giving you a clear path.
Yeah, so we have obviously tons of customers right now, and we interview all of them, and they're all asking for about 200 things, and all of those 200 things are on our roadmap, being pushed to the bottom of our roadmap. And the only way we prioritize it is more numbers, the more people asking for it, and more paying users asking for it. And we also have something we've started is a co-pay model, where we say, if you're a big customer and you have a budget, and you want that feature that's number 200 on my list at the moment, and you want it next month rather than in a year's time, help me build it. I haven't got the cash to build it right now, but if you want it right now, pay us. It takes me $200 an hour to build something like this. You pay 100, and I can have it ready for you in the next month. But everybody else will benefit from it, and you will get it sooner. And so actually, we've built over the last year probably half our product with this kind of model with bigger companies that have budgets that have paid for it.
During the prototype process, process, when you were building yours, how many times did you build it, take it apart, send it off? Did you do it all yourself? Do you have somebody build it for you, or?
So I've done it all myself. I had to learn how to do 3D printing, how to make models, and like I'm not an engineer, I'm a microbiologist, so I had to learn how to use software, how to acquire software. It turns out you can get the software for free. Companies will give it to you for companies that make less than $100,000 in revenue. You can get access to it for free, and then you have to learn how to use it. So I had to train myself how to do that. And then I convinced Biogenerator to buy a 3D printer, and I've been 3D printing every component short of the electronics from it. Once I started having success there some things that I needed, and I didn't bring any of them with me, but I've been making tips and tubes, right? Normally they're made through injection molding. I've learned that the tech shop that's open now, I can make those same clear parts through 3D printing now at a fraction of the cost it cost me to pay someone else to do it. So I was getting 9 tips for $500, through this 3D printing. For $500, I bought all the materials and access. I can print as many as I want now. So tech shop's a great resource. Just got to be willing to get your hands dirty.
I have a question for Pravina. Telefy's been a part of a number of accelerator programs, from Arch Grants to 500 Startups and another one. Did you find anything particularly useful through all these, and why have you continually been a part of more and more?
Right. So Arch Grants isn't an accelerator program, really. It's that they give you the cash and they help you with the introductions, which is great, which is not, many other accelerators don't do that. 500 Startups is focused on growth hacking. So if you're at a certain MRR and you've got a model that's working, they help you almost double, triple, quadruple that. So it's just skills around how you can reach the market faster, viral things like that. So that's their focus. And we were there, and we wanted to learn these skills because I don't know them. I'm not a marketing person, and my partner definitely isn't. And so we went there to suck up that knowledge. And then we took Alchemist, because it's strategic. We'd like to raise a Series A next year. They're backed by, Alchemist is a seed accelerator, B2B focused, especially large company focused. They help you with customer introductions. So they have a panel of P&G and Oracle and everybody sitting there listening to your pitch, and they're helping you work out a further product market fit. And beyond that, they're backed by Sequoia and Kozler, Draper, who I'd love to get funding from one day. So that's the reason why we took that.
Have any of you had to go outside of St. Louis to kind of resource or find things to get your product service off the ground? Or have you found that right here in this city, you're kind of pretty much able to do every function?
I have it. Okay. So my product is kind of a specialty, right? It's a laboratory resource that is disposable. And there's not very many manufacturers around the world. We found one in California that's the largest manufacturer of tips and tubes in the United States. And so we started talking with them, and it turns out there's another group in Florida that is really good at making the molds for those, and we kind of put them in competition with each other to help our situation. Neither of them are in St. Louis, but it's worked out for us.
Yeah, I would say the same for us. Nothing in St. Louis, but we try. I mean, we found something like in South County. By luck, they were just doing like tongs for other suppliers, but they're now all gone to like Mexico and to other parts of. There's maybe webbing that we've recently found within the U.S., but it's really hard to find components for our business. So we continue to source mostly from Europe.
My experience is a little bit different because we don't really manufacture something like these two great entrepreneurs do. What I found is that it's better for me to find customers outside of St. Louis. And the reason being, one of my advisors, he told me, and this is just for me, I can't speak for anyone else. He said that the suitcase is more powerful than the briefcase, right? And what he was saying was that if I go in and I tell someone my office is in T-Rex, they automatically discredit me because I'm a startup, right? Or you're just getting started, blah, 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 right? But if I call somebody in San Diego, California, they have no idea how big Lead Warmer is. right? So now when I say, hey, we do this and we charge X number of dollars, if it solves the problem, they're not dealing with the bias of me just being a local startup, right? So the best example would be, and the example that he used with me was when they introduce you in San Diego, they're gonna say, all the way from St. Louis, Ron Story, he's worked with people here. In St. Louis, they're gonna say, hey, you know Ron that we see at T-Rex? He talking tonight at CIC. None of my friends are here, you know? It's really that way. My cousin Ricky works here. She didn't even know that this is what I do. This is probably the first time in her life she knows what I do for a living, right? Because I don't talk to people in St. Louis about it, right?
Yeah, I found out Ricky's related to just about everybody. She didn't know that they were part of it.
So it may be easier sometimes to find customers outside of St. Louis, in my opinion, because you allow your customer to use the imagination of how big your business is. You know, that's just hustling, in my opinion. But
Well, I think that certainly works, Ron. So we did get our first few marquee customers here in St. Louis when we had a very minimal viable product, an MVP. And thankfully they gave us a chance. And I think it was down to the credibility of Arch Grants, to be honest, that we got through to some of these decision makers in big companies that helped us build out some of the features that we never knew people would want. But beyond that, we have people contacting us from all around the world, and we say some of these names, and yeah, I guess they don't associate us with being a startup, and from T-Rex. So, and I think that helps. Yeah, sure.
I didn't realize T-Rex was a dirty word.
I know, no, I take that back. I'm sorry, it isn't.
No, I know.
that's not what we're saying. We're just saying that we want them to imagine us being bigger.
As I said, it's a smaller startup, so how do people around the world find you? So with B2B startups, yeah, I remember with consumer products and stuff, there's social marketing and everything, there's social media and stuff. For B2B, how are you sort of finding those customers around the world, being a smaller?
So we have spent minimum, absolutely almost nothing on marketing so far. And it's just search engine optimization. So writing good articles, blog posts. We've been around there for about 4 years now. We've had a web presence, and it's just Google juice. Does that make sense? I don't know much about it, but I know it's that. It's just organic traffic. People are looking up exactly what they want, business process management for whatever. And we're landing number one. It's just something that nobody else is really serving, or we're on the first page. And then they see some of the logos, and then they're in, and they're contacting us and signing up for a trial. And we just have to double down on that and just scale out on that.
Can I say one thing to add to your question? One of the easiest ways to find customers, people will tell you to cold call, right? Oh, you should cold call and try. Don't do that, right? Let me tell you why. You don't want to cold call trying to sell your services. One of the things that I've learned, the best, if you don't remember anything, I know this as a fact. The best way nowadays to bootstrap a business is with a podcast. If you don't believe me, I can tell you, after this, I can tell you 5 businesses and show you their podcasts. Their businesses that were built just by podcasting. Now, here's the thing. Most businesses, if you're doing B2B, small business to small business, they don't have a lot of time to do marketing and exposure and search engine optimization, right? So we learned how to do that. But here's what we do. We say, hey, Pravina, would you like to be on our podcast? Sure, Ron. Well, we interview people, entrepreneurs telling their story. Now, what do I have? I got 30 minutes of her telling me about her business and how it works and everything. And guess what one of my questions is going to be? What's one of the things you hate? Right? And she's going to say, well, we hate this. Cool. Now, this is my market research, right? But she has no idea. But to the public, it's a podcast, right? And when we put it out, it's a podcast. But I'm doing all of my market research, right? So now I've been interviewing all of these different people. And then when at the end, I have all of this research. There was a company here in St. Louis really fast that did this. It's called Cynic. They did the beer thing, right? Both of us lost Arch Grants, and we sat in the car and we bitched and moaned about how we were going to be successful without it, right? And one of the things I said, dude, you need to start a podcast and get all of these people that'll build an army for you. So he interviewed all of these brewers around the world, and he thought he was solving a beer problem because he thought people wanted craft beer on their desk. He found out that all the brewers had a distribution issue. So if you look at his first Kickstarter thing, it talked about, hey, beer on your table. you watch the new one, it's about, hey, we can improve distribution, right? Because through the podcast called Craft Conscious, he learned that he was solving the wrong problem, right? So now he has 3,000 brewers that have a cynic sitting on their bar at their brewer place that's marketing for him. Does that make sense? So podcasting is the most underused customer development product out there, because you're genuinely providing them with something, more exposure, but at the same time, you're doing more research and becoming the authority in that space. Does that make sense? So if I go on Oprah Winfrey's show, who's the star? She is. It's Oprah. She owns the platform. If she comes on my show, I have the authority because she's on my show, right? If they're on your show, you're automatically an authority in that space. So now you can call, and the people who are interested in your space are listening to your show already. So you have an authority to launch a product off of. Does that make sense? Okay.
1, 2, and then that's going to wrap it up.
I just want to circle back really quickly to when you were talking about having the clients before you even meet your friend. So I have a situation, it's actually a former employer, they're a gigantic service company. They can actually build exactly what I want to do, but they're not interested in that space. They're interested in it because they need what I'm presenting. So I work with them on a monthly basis with sustainability issues. I was a part of that team also through my current employer. So one of the biggest thing that I can do is come to them with something. So I'm not going to come back to them already with what I've already been pitching. I want to bring something to the table. So I was thinking, since I was, I'm supposedly working on a prototype for this platform, maybe you, and I think you kind of alluded to having students, I don't necessarily care to have students, but just having, what about like a case study where I bring in other people with this future client? I want to be able to get something for them so that I can start collecting a check really soon. So, and also you all talked about having a very, paraphrasing, just a simple something that can go now, and then you develop as you get to know what your client needs. I have a client, and if this works right, that's why I need help, and Green Emissions could blow up.
Can you hold that into one?
Yeah, the question is, how, based on what you said, because I never thought of it that way, and maybe we can take this offline, if this client...
This is software, right? You're doing something software, right? Anybody who's doing anything with software, 2 things you could use. One, you can use Microsoft PowerPoint. There are click actions that you can use to build out your entire app and it fits the same screen. So they're going to see the same screenshot that they would see in your thing. The other thing is a product called Balsamiq, right? And Balsamiq, you can build out the entire thing with the click actions, and it'll look just like your real web app. You can design it to look just like any piece of software out there. So nowadays, you don't have to have the back end code to work to make to get them to get a gist of what you're trying to do. Does that make sense? And if they don't like it, then they're not going to like it after you build it. So you may as well use the free stuff to test it with them and get their feedback before you. Yeah, Balsamiq with a Q at the end, though. I don't know how you spell the vinegar, but this one has a Q at the end.
Anything else for that? We have one more question otherwise? Okay, bring us home.
My question is, you had mentioned that when you originally started, it was supposed to be a consumer checklist app, and it sort of evolved and changed over time. One of the things that I'm concerned about is, I spent time doing the business model canvas, I'm spending time doing research, but it's like, when you actually start doing the actual work or developing the flag and the actual development, like so much time, knowing that it could potentially shift. Like, what was your experience when you started in one area? Did you start building that and then it developed into something else?
So those 6 months that I mentioned, where we went out and talked to people about what they wanted and how much they would pay for it, we were selling vaporware, in a way, screenshots of something that we hadn't built. We had paid someone a very tiny amount to build something that looked real. Took screenshots of it, put it on our deck, and said, hey, this is what we're building. We're building it right now. We're putting cash into it. Does it look good? Does it look good? And would you use it, and how much would you pay for it? And if you wouldn't use it, who do you think you would use it, and could you introduce this to that person? And so I did about 100 interviews that weren't really systematic in any way, and I wish they were. So screenshots initially, and in terms of building a website, for example, we put up a very simple web page that was ugly as hell for about 2 years. It wasn't very nice, and it had 5 little bullet points, and those 5 bullet points would change based on what customers were saying or potential customers were saying. And we had a little form at the end of it saying, if you're interested in what we're building, these 5 bullet points, then sign up now, and we'll let you know as soon as it's done, and we'll give you a free trial or even like something special. And so we had hundreds of people fill that out, even if it was these were managers and decision makers across giant companies, all in the US really, fill that out saying, well, please let us know when it's coming, because we've never really heard of anything like this, and we're waiting.
As you got additional research and during those 2 years, was it 2 years?
No, a year or so, I'd say. So it started off, the first web page was, hi, a checklist app for your, how to build a tent and get a visa for Japan. And then it was a checklist app for accounts payable and onboarding your freelancer workforce, which was like a painful problem. And so it's just messaging.
If you get a chance, Google lead warmer and you'll see a video, a cartoon video, right? About a minute and a half in, it says, the best thing about lead warmer is there's no complicated email marketing software to use. It just works. There was no software for them to use because we didn't have any, right? So we were using someone else's software to make this work on the back end, but I needed the money to continue to build the software or to get the other version. So people are willing to buy the tickets in advance. That's what Praveen is saying. Sell the tickets. Build a list of people who want to buy the tickets, right? And then sell them the tickets and then tell them they're going to come to the show 3 weeks from now. People bought Beyonce tickets in St. Louis in February. They waited 6 months, but they gave her $400 in February when they got the income tax money. What a brilliant genius she is, right? Right? But that's the deal, right? Sell the tickets. Nobody in here should walk out of here without selling something. Sell something to your customers within the next 30 days. That's where you find out the real feedback. If you're not selling, you're going to be out of business anyway. You can raise all the money you want, and then when you don't sell anything, they're going to take your company.
So in quick sum, know your problem. Modify your solution. Listen to your customer. Don't go in a room and spend a lot of time and a lot of money and build it and expect that people are going to love what you built. Remember, I sent you a suggested reading list. Lean Startup is on that. If you don't believe me, read his. If you don't believe him, talk to these guys. Right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but it's also what works. Okay? Join me in thanking our guests.